Hello, and thank you so much for coming today. Please let me start by sending my sincerest apologies. I genuinely wish I could be with you today. Unfortunately, I have a long-standing commitment which has pulled me away, and so I can't be there today. But I thought I would pre-record for you some of my thoughts, some of the things which are going on at the minute, and some of the things which I feel like God is putting on my heart, and so hopefully we can pray into those things together, and we can help build a vision for what the youth at St Saviour's should look like. So to start with, I thought that I could talk you through an average week, because we already have a lot of commitments of things which we are doing week in, week out, and I thought I could talk you through some of these things. On Mondays, we're in St Peter's, where we've been doing a Youth Alpha. We've already done this for 1 year, and we're now invited back to do it for a second year. Last year was very successful. We had, on average, I think about 20 young people coming each week to hear the gospel, which is amazing. And we're hoping and praying that this week we'll have similar numbers and be able to invite new people in to share the good news with them. On Tuesdays, we've been doing our prayerful meditations. Now, if you haven't already checked out our prayerful meditations, can I strongly recommend that you do so. They have been a really nice way of being still and listening to God whilst hearing Bible readings and focusing on a topic in prayer. And I've really enjoyed doing these. It's hard to say how many we have in an average week who come to that. Some weeks it's none. I think the most views we've had on a video is 20, but it changes a lot from week to week, and also some of the views are after, and some of them are live, some of them aren't. So it's hard to say precisely how many come and view this. But we do seem to be getting a fair amount. On Wednesday lunchtimes, we run a big questions club in Avonbourne School. This is a club where young people can come to with their biggest and hardest questions. In the last year, we've asked questions like, is there a God? Is there such thing as morality? Is any of this even real? As well as other questions which are perhaps a little less big, like how do you make pizza? But it's an amazing opportunity where we're meeting with young people, many of whom aren't Christian. On an average week, we probably have about 10 coming, but there's a lot of young people who come occasionally, and it's one of those groups which seems to be growing all the time. So we've got this amazing group of young people who we get to talk to and who we get to share a little bit of the gospel with each week. On Wednesday evenings, we have Furnace, which is your more typical youth group. We have young people come in to play pool, table tennis, video games and more, and we share a little bit of the good news towards the end of the session. This is one of those groups at the minute which feels like each week there is a big encouragement to it, but also a big challenge to it. It's a group which doesn't have huge numbers, but we've got some wonderful young men who come to this group who get to hear a bit about Jesus. And I am wondering if this is one of the groups which needs to be developed and changed, but I'm not quite sure what it looks like yet. On Sunday mornings, we have our Sunday school type group, which is a small group where we meet every week. We spend a lot of time in Bible study and prayer, but also play some games and do some activities as well. Over the summer, we did a series where we tried to write our own worship song, and we spent some time in worship together. And now we're just starting a series on the armour of God, and then we're planning to go on and do Jesus' parables. And then on Sunday evenings, we have Core. Core is genuinely one of the highlights of my week. It's something I look forward to because they are a wonderful group. It's a really laid back and chilled atmosphere, and we sit together, we chill, we catch up, play some games, and then we get to do a heavy Bible study together. Recently we did a series on Revelation, which was fascinating and had a load of good insights and some amazing questions. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do the series on this term, but I'm thinking we're going to continue the theme of John and do his gospel. I think the big challenge with Core at the minute is that we're going to have a lot of those young people go off to university shortly, and I'm not quite sure what that group is going to look like once those people leave, but they are some key characters, so it may change dramatically. On top of these groups, we have a few less regular commitments. We occasionally do one-to-ones. Sadly, these have dropped off a little bit as I've not been able to commit to them because I've not been very well for the last few months. but I am slowly getting better, and hopefully very soon we'll be able to restart those and to focus very heavily on them. We also go into schools for lessons where we do questions like what do Christians actually believe, and we get to share what the Bible actually says to young people who 95% of which won't have a connection to a church. So there are other things we are doing as well, but those are our general week-to-week commitments. So I think the first set of things we can be praying for is, firstly, what do these groups look like moving forward? But also, are there any of these groups we need to let down and put aside in order to let another group or project flourish? The next thing I thought I could share with you guys is some things which I would like to be doing if we had unlimited resources and unlimited time and abilities. I think one of the things which I'd really love to do is get involved with primary schools. Now, this was something which we did at my last church, where I would go into the primary school in the local area once a week, just to go in and play with the kids and have a kickabout. And it was just about going in the lunch times and purely getting to know the young people. And the reason we did that was so that I could be a bridge from the primary school to the secondary school. So that then when they got to the secondary school, I was a familiar face which they already knew, and I was able to invite them into our groups. And we found that really effective and worked really well. And I was able to invite a lot of the young people into the groups we were running there. And so this is something I'm wondering about adopting here, perhaps going into St. James or St. Peter's in the primary school, in order to get to know the year sixes, go in at lunchtimes to get to know them and to build relationships with them, so that then I can then invite them into groups which we're already running. The second thing I would love to be running is a Dropin youth cafe. We've got this amazing area in the link, which I think would be amazing to open up once a week, so that on their way home from school, young people can drop in, have a coffee, maybe play some board games, and see what we're like. And then from there, once we build that relationship and get to know them, we can invite them into our other groups. The third thing, which I think is going to be very important for us to do, is that I think at some point in the next year, we desperately need to run a series on what does the Bible say about sex. This is one of those topics which I found has been coming up a lot recently in very different groups, and young people have had a lot of amazing questions which I think that we need to spend some time answering fully. This is something I've put a fair bit of thought into because, as I say, it's questions which have come from different groups, and I'm wondering if the best way to do it is to run it as a separate series from any current group. Rather than run it in Furnace or do it in Core, maybe we need to run a separate group purely to tackle this series and invite people from all groups into that, so that then we can know that that's the specific reason they're there, is to talk about that issue, and we can run a 5 or 6 week series just on that issue, purely dedicated to that issue, and then we can stop the series after that. The third thing I would like to ask you to be praying into are the things which are concerns with how we move forward. I think there are two big concerns which come to mind when I think of things in our youth ministry that worry me. The first one is how many young people we have leaving for university. This year we have 3 young people leaving our groups and going to university. Next year there'll be at least a further 2 that I can think of. And that may not sound like a lot, but that is a significant portion of our youth group. Now, that's not something which I'm overly worried about, because that's something which it feels like as a youth worker you worry about every single year, and then 5 minutes later God's provided a whole new batch of young people. But this year it does seem like there are a lot more than we've had in recent times, so that's certainly something which I would appreciate prayer for. The second thing which I think we need to be praying into is our leader situation. At the minute, the team I have consists of myself and Ryan. Normally we have more students on top of that. At the time of recording, we don't know if we will have any yet, but we presume we will have 1 or 2. But whilst they are amazingly helpful, once they are only available during term time, and that can be a big difficulty come Christmas and Easter and, well, the major times of year when we want to be doing things. I would love to go on a camp next year, but at the minute, I'm not sure where the leaders would come from. So that is also a very big concern, which we absolutely need to be praying into. And I'd love for you guys to be praying that God would send some amazing young people to our groups, but also send some amazing leaders who we can build and grow to minister to those young people. The final thing, which I was hoping you'd be praying into, is that there's a couple of things which I'm feeling God might be putting on my heart, which don't necessarily fall within my remit as youth worker, but which I feel like God might be asking of us. And one of those is to start ministering to people in their 20s and 30s. This isn't a group we have in massive numbers of at St. Saviour's, but I'm wondering if it's a group which God is calling us to minister to. Now, this might look like getting involved with the university, for instance, but then that is a bit outside of our area. It might look like doing something seasonally, so that when our young people come back from uni, the ones who have left who are 18 and 19, we could run a group during the seasons when they are back in Bournemouth. But I'm wondering if we need to do something which supports people within that age group. The other thing which I would love to do, which I felt like God has put on my heart for some time now, is that I would love to get another banner like this one printed, a Wonderful Furnace banner, but instead just getting the phrase, "Can I pray for you?" printed on it. And then to sit out either in the car park or in the by the old church entrance on the main road, and just sit there and wait and see if anyone comes and joins. And that's something I've been wondering about doing for a while now, and I wonder if perhaps now is the time to do that. Now hopefully that gives you an insight as to how you can be praying for our youth ministry and for our vision for our youth ministry. Because we want to build a youth ministry which serves God's kingdom, which builds faith in young people, shares the good news, and ultimately fills his kingdom with young people in our area. And we need God's vision as to how we can do that best. Cheers.